Boston City Councilor Ricardo Arroyo, Chair of the Committee on Government Operations. It is Thursday, August 31st, 2023, and this hearing is on docket 1300, an ordinance amending City of Boston Code, Ordinances Chapter 12, Section 1220, Latino and Caribbean Affairs for Public Health and Welfare. This proposal would create a dedicated office equipped to attend to the growing needs of the Latino and Caribbean population of Boston. This office seeks to ensure that services and policies address the needs and concerns of the Latino and Caribbean communities through community engagement, efforts, services, and policies, as well as a way to monitor the progress and provide oversight and accountability on the impact of the city's policies, programs, procedures, and protocols. This ordinance would call for a Director of Latino and Caribbean Affairs to be appointed by the mayor. The Director of Latino and Caribbean Affairs Director's main responsibilities would include advising and assisting in developing policies designed for Latino and Caribbean residents while embracing the accessibility of city's programming, services, and benefits, in addition to conducting research and soliciting community and stakeholder input. In accordance with Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, modifying certain requirements of the open meeting law, including the requirement that public bodies conduct their meetings in a public space that is open and physically accessible to the public, the City Council will be conducting this hearing remotely, and it is being recorded. This enables the City Council to carry out its responsibilities while ensuring public access to its deliberations through adequate alternative means. This hearing is being recorded and is being live streamed at www.boston.gov/citycounciltv and on Xfinity 8, RCN 82, Files 964. To provide written testimony, members of the public can also email the committee email at ccc.go@boston.gov. If members of the public would like to provide public testimony and have not signed up to do so, please email Christine O'Donnell at christine.o'donnell, ODONNELL, @boston.gov to request the link. I'd like to stress that we need information for people who are providing public testimony, so please sign up with your full name. Make sure that your username on Zoom matches the name you used to sign up for public comment. This morning, I'm joined by my colleagues, Councilor Mejia, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Worrell, Council President Flynn, and Councilor Murphy. We have interpreters for Spanish available. Once you've entered the Zoom meeting, there's a little globe at the bottom that says interpretation. Please click the interpretation icon at the bottom right of the screen and choose Spanish if that is your language of choice. I'm going to allow, at this time, the Spanish interpreters to just tell people how to do that in Spanish. I know we have Marcelo and Erica Perez with us, so whoever is more comfortable explaining to folks how to access the interpretation.
Thank you, Chair. Buenos días, mi nombre es Erika Pérez y vamos a estar interpretando simultáneamente del... Can you hear me?
All right, there we go. I think I was muted for that last part, but for the sake of time, I'm going to skip my opening remarks and go right ahead to the ordinance lead sponsor, Councilor Mejia. And then I'll go to co-sponsor Worrell, and then I'll give every other councilor the ability to make an opening remark if they so wish. Councilor Mejia.
Good morning, everyone. Really excited to be here. Just wanted to note for the record that we asked for the different types of translation that would need to be available today, and we were advised that Spanish was one of those languages that we wanted to make sure was here. So wanted to just thank our interpreters and those who have done the outreach to get us here. So let me just first start off by level setting and helping people understand that this is an important conversation that we're having here today to really look at what this moment really needs as it relates to addressing the social, emotional, and economic well-being of our Caribbean and Latino communities. I know, having grown up here in the city of Boston as an Afro-Caribbean Latina, right, that oftentimes those who need it most are often the least served. And that we have a mentality here in the city of Boston that always pits people against each other. And so as we continue to have this conversation, I'm going to encourage our panelists and our public testimony to share with us why, in their own, from their own perspective, what it means to be a Caribbean here in the city of Boston, and what are the things that they need to help support them in advancing. And the same will go for the Latino community. This is not about one or the other. This is about an and both. And this is not about a competition. We have this this mentality here around who has it the worst. We are all struggling here, and this is an opportunity for us to establish something that will address the needs of all. And when I say all, I mean all. And so as we continue to go through this process, I want to uplift that when we're thinking about communities, this is an opportunity for us to also think about who is not at the table, who is not within this space, so that we can make sure that when we draft this ordinance into law, it is reflective of the voices of the people who are going to most benefit from something like this. So right now it is saying Office of Latino and Caribbean Affairs. That is just the working title. It could end up being 2 positions. It could end up being 5 positions. Whatever it is, it will be the will of the people that determines what it will look like. So I am going to encourage those who are participating in public testimony to not tell us what you don't want, but to come here and let us know what you do want, so that we can make sure that whatever it is that we do pass has your voice and desires amplified. And so we're really looking forward to working alongside the administration so that we can meet this moment. We do know that there are over 30% of Boston residents are of Caribbean or Latin descent, which means that when we're breaking things down, 130,000 residents are Latinx and 58,000 residents are Caribbean. So that is a large percentage of the city of Boston, and we want to make sure that whatever it is that we do is reflected in programming and policies to help move these communities forward. So I look forward to the robust conversation and grounding it with what it is that we need to do together to get us there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mejia. Councilor Worrell, floor is yours. Not sure if Councilor Worrell has disconnected, but when he comes back, I'll give him the floor. I'm going to do it in order of appearance. And so, Councilor Flaherty, if you have any opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Obviously, in the interest of everyone that's been available since 10 o'clock, I'll defer opening comments. Just say that appreciate and respect, obviously, the Latino and the Caribbean community and their great contributions to our city. So look forward to continuing working together. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Council President Flynn, if you have anything you'd like to say.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will be very brief too. I'm here to listen to the community. The Latino and Caribbean community, as Councilor Mejia mentioned, 30% of our population. They contribute significantly to our economy, culture, community, all areas of life. They're in our military, sacrificing for our city, sacrificing for our nation. So I'm here to support them, support this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Murphy. Okay. I think, and I'll just go to the originally sponsored. Councilor Mejia, would you like to start? I know the administration won't be available until afternoon. Do you want to start with community comment?
Yeah, so let's a level set so that those who are listening in understand why we're starting at 11. We were asked by the administration to have a later start, so we did not officially start at 10. This was really slated later so that we can accommodate and making sure that we have representation here. So if those folks who have been tuning in before 10, we apologize, but we did make it a public notice, so we're just really grateful to have folks so super eager to be here. We also know that this is the Caribbean month, right? We had the Caribbean Festival recently. Today we're doing the Trinidadian flag raising, so it's fitting that we are doing this hearing here today in this moment. And so I think in the interest of time, would love to start off with the community panel. First, we have Danielle Johnson, Andrew Sharp, Dr. Estrella Luna, and Dr. Lona Rivera on deck. So those are the 4 community panelists that we have.
So
and
do
then
you want to start, so
with them.
Councilman, you want to start with the panelists and then go to the community comment after? That's fine with me.
Yep.
So let me introduce our panel. We have with us today Dr. Lorna Rivera, the professor and director of the Gaston Institute for Latino Community Development at UMass Boston, alongside Bianca Ortiz-White, also from the Gaston Institute. Dr. Nina Estrella Luna, who's the owner of Star Luna Consulting, Andrew Sharp, who's the chairman of Authentic Caribbean Foundation, and Danielle Johnson, who's the founder and CEO of Spark FM Online. I believe there's a presentation that folks may have that they'd like to share, specifically Dr. Lorna Rivera. Is that accurate? Fantastic. And so I want to give each of you the ability to give an opening, and then we'll go into that presentation. Does that work?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes, Counselor.
So I'm going to go ahead, because you're going to do the presentation, Dr. Rivera, I'm going to come to you last, and then you can go right into the presentation.
Well, actually, Bianca's going to share the slides. Is that,
Yeah.
does that matter?
No, it doesn't make any difference to me. Same thing. Thank you. Dr. Nina Estrella Luna, if you'd like to give an opening statement.
Yes. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Nina Estrella Luna. I'm the owner and principal of Star Luna Consulting, which provides anti-racism and social equity research, education, and consulting services. Previously, I was a university professor, a political sociologist, and law and policy scholar for 15 years, and I've been a social justice advocate for over 20 years here in Boston. So I'd like to start first by addressing a misconception about the Latinx and Caribbean community here in Boston, which I know my colleagues over at the Gaston will go into in more detail. But just to start off, the majority of Latinx and Caribbean heritage people in Boston are not immigrants. A lot of people want to believe, or at least make that claim, that a majority of us were born outside the US, but as Dr. Rivera and Bianca will show, this is simply false. We are not all immigrants, and to make that claim is to put us in boxes we don't belong in, and it devalues the complexity of our lived experiences. Equally important, my experience as a US-born, white-passing Latina from California is very different than the Boston-born children of my undocumented neighbors, which is different than the experiences of third-generation Bostonians of Puerto Rican heritage. The experiences of US-born children with immigrant parents are different than the experiences and issues of US-born children with immigrant grandparents, which will also vary depending on their economic position and other issues. So to properly attend to the needs, the goals, and the aspirations of the Latinx and Caribbean peoples of Boston, we need an office that both understands that diversity and complexity and is focused on the unique situations of our communities. Now, I spoke at the previous hearing about 3 potential functions that an Office of Latino and Caribbean Affairs could serve. I don't have time to go into everything I said there, so either watch the video or ask me about it. But as I mentioned in that hearing, there are departments and individuals working in the city of Boston who sincerely want to design and implement programs and to make policy and program decisions that are equity centering. I know these folks and I've worked with these folks. They are trying and they need guidance to do it better and to continue to improve. They deserve a resource that can provide that support. But getting to my earlier point, that support cannot be put on the backs of the mayor's Office of Immigrant Advancement. That would be a disservice to Moya. Moya already has responsibilities for people who come from over 130 countries. Literally, the entire world lives in Boston. People who are refugees, asylum seekers, green card holders, naturalized citizens, and others living with various forms of insecure status. To place additional responsibilities on Moya for the US citizens of Latinx and Caribbean heritage would be misguided at best. A much better approach is creating an office whose job is to collaborate with Moya where that adds value. The same can be said about the Office of Equity. They have to attend to a whole variety of equity issues that need attention. And the same can be said about the cultural liaisons, even under the new organizational structure. We cannot expect a single Latino liaison to attend to the needs of even the Spanish language heritage Latinx peoples. We're talking about 18 different countries and Puerto Rico and the US citizens, all encompassing a huge diversity of peoples and cultures. And I think also we should also get real about this. The issues that I deal with as a light-skinned Latina will be different than the issues that my Black, Haitians, or Jamaican neighbors deal with. This is true when it comes to the experiences of Latinx and Caribbean children who make up the majority of students in our public schools. It is true when it comes to being a small business owner. It is true when it comes to who gets the benefit of the doubt in official processes. So right now, the attention to Latinx and Caribbean peoples in Boston is divided across multiple departments, multiple agencies and offices with other responsibilities that need attention. What's needed is someone who can coordinate across the city, who can provide support to the advocates and individuals, and who can create opportunities for accountability. That's what this proposal would create, and it deserves your support. So I appreciate your time and consideration, and I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and give Andrew Sharp the floor, and then I'm going to go back to Lorna, Dr. Rivera, because I believe there might be some time issues there. So, Mr. Sharp, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, and all protocol acknowledged. I'm Andrew Sharp, and I'm the chairman of the Authentic Caribbean Foundation, a nonprofit organization based here in Boston, in operation for the past 10 years, and I'm also the program's board member for the Institute of Caribbean Studies in Washington, D.C., that oversees U.S. Caribbean policies and convene with the State Department and the White House. This office is so important to us in terms of three aspects. One, strengthening that law, the U.S. Caribbean Engagement Act, H.R. 4939, which is that federal law which deals with U.S. Caribbean strategic policies pertaining to health, education, trade and investment, prosperity for its Caribbean American community. So definitely this office will really work as a pivot and as an empowerment from the city and state level to move policies with regards to Caribbean American community, capturing the data, looking at health issues pertaining to our community, and strengthen the education systems between both the city and the state and the engagement within the Caribbean community, because a lot of Caribbean folks engage with their homeland. So it's important that we understand this policy and see how we can strengthen more policy for development, exchange program in education, health services in terms of healthcare. We see in the healthcare system, a majority of healthcare workers are from the Caribbean and Latino community. So how can we look at those policies to strengthen what is happening? Right now, we're faced with the redetermination of mass health. Our community need to be, so those kind of policies we need to look at. In addition to, we see that policies pertaining to investment and trade in terms of goods and services, how exchange in terms of goods and services between us and our neighboring land. With regards to education too, looking at cultural competent program that will fit of the growing population, because census data shows us 58,000 Caribbean folks live in the city, 58,181 Caribbean American folks, foreign-born population live in the city of Boston. And we see it's broken down by the 5 major Caribbean national. And now Haiti has increased those numbers with the influx of the migrants and refugees. So we really need this office to look at all of these situations, the arrival of migrants from our Caribbean shores, and also let's not forget about disaster and climate change, how that is also important. It affects our community And this office can guide the guidance of these policies that are coming from the federal level through the state level that will affect our community from a city level. So I endorse this, and also by having this office, we will be the second state to establish this office, because Maryland has established a Caribbean Affairs office from the state level with our Caribbean American governor who is in office. Also, we have a Caribbean American lieutenant governor that is here in office at the state level. So this kind of office will be very instrumental in strengthening the community, supporting our community, and to move us forward in the 21st century, as what City of Boston said, Boston for all, inclusion for all. So I thank you so much, and I will yield to my other participants. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sharp. I'm going to go to Dr. Rivera. I know you have a presentation that Bianca is probably going to share, but I'd like to let you have the floor for an intro and then the presentation, and then we'll go to our final panelist, Danielle Johnson.
Oh, thank you so much, City Councilor Arroyo, and also City Councilors Mejia and Worrell for making this ordinance possible. I'm Professor Lorna Rivera. I teach Latino studies at the University of Massachusetts in Boston, and I'm also the director of the Mauricio Gaston Institute for Latino Community Development and Public Policy. And our institute was actually established in response to the fact that there were so many different Latinx groups moving into the state into the 1980s, in addition to the long-established Puerto Rican and Dominican communities. So we exist for a purpose that is similar to what is needed in the city of Boston, right? To have an office that recognizes the diverse cultures and languages, migration experiences, and the differences among our different communities that, you know, we kind of get put all Latino and Caribbean. In the previous testimony for the hearing, the previous hearing, we did present from the Gaston Institute some data about the differences among the different Latinx groups. And so I wanted to actually turn it now to Bianca, our Latino policy analyst, to present some more specific data about the Caribbean communities, because that's also very important, you know, specific needs there. And so I want to thank Bianca, and we'll turn her to give some slides, if you don't mind.
Good morning, everybody. I'll share my screen now. Okay. So good morning, everybody. So like Dr. Rivera said, in the previous hearing, we presented a number of data points looking at the different populations of the Latinx community here in Boston. For this hearing, we thought it'd be really interesting if we focused particularly on the non-Latino Caribbean population, looking at the same data points. If there's enough time, we can actually show both data of Latinx and the non-Latino Caribbean population, just to see kind of the comparison between both groups. So like was said earlier, 30% of Boston's entire Caribbean population, Boston's population of Caribbean residents makes up 30% of the city's population. So that means that 1 in 12 Bostonians is actually a Caribbean immigrant. Caribbeans in Boston are from many different cultural backgrounds, right? From Haitian to Jamaican to Puerto Rican to Dominican. As shown on this slide, the largest groups of non-Latino Caribbean are Haitian, Jamaican, and Trinidadian Tobagonian populations, with Haitians making up the largest. So Trinidadian and Tobagonian make up the largest, but they're actually a smaller group. They represent about just 2,600 residents. As was said before, Haitian population is actually growing here in the city. Haitian residents make up about just over 23,000 residents. And with the growing refugee crisis on the island, right, we expect to see that number increase. Oh, and also these groups make up 67.5% of foreign-born residents, right, which is larger than the foreign-born population in the city. So the non-Latino Caribbean populations tend to have lower poverty rates compared to the rest of Boston. But again, Jamaican and Trinidadian and Tobagonian residents are a much smaller group. It is pretty significant that 12.6% of Haitian residents live in poverty. So the non-Latino Caribbean populations have a wide range of educational attainments, as shown on this slide, right? If we look at high school attainment, we see some disparities there, with Trinidadian residents more likely to have received a high school diploma. Yet when we look at attainment of a bachelor's degree or higher, right, we see that Haitian and Jamaican residents are more likely to have achieved receiving a bachelor's degree, right? And in total, only 28.3% of non-Latino Caribbean adults have similar educational attainment to the rest of the residents of Boston, which is about almost 53%. So 34.4% of Boston's households are owner-occupied, while 33.5% of non-Latino Caribbean are homeowners. Yet if we dig deeper, right, we find that Haitian residents are more likely to be renters. And this suggests that there are differences in housing access and home ownership opportunities. Non-Latino Caribbean residents are concentrated in service occupations, and this is correlated to educational attainment. Service occupations include healthcare, social services, food services, and transportation, to name a few. Compared to the median income of $53,566 for Boston workers, non-Latino Caribbean workers' median is $47,960. Yet again, the median personal income for Haitian workers is significantly less compared to other Caribbean groups. This data demonstrates why it is important to understand specific circumstances and to provide targeted services and more resources for Caribbean populations. So now I'd like to transition from these data points and talk a little bit about the history, particularly of Haitian and Jamaican migration to Boston, because I think for a lot of folks, they think it's relatively new, but that isn't the case. The Caribbean as a whole, including Latino and non-Latino islands and nations, has a shared history of colonization. We understand that the impact of settler colonialism has been devastating. Some of the negative impacts include environmental degradation, slavery, attempted genocide of indigenous peoples, severe human rights violations, and economic instability, which has produced significant wealth inequality. And we continue to see how some of these issues can long outlast one group's colonial rule. This is incredibly important to highlight, because this history has important implications, not only for why people migrate, but also how they integrate into their receiving communities, particularly here in the US. So in terms of Haitian migration really started to the US during the mid-1950s, and it was triggered in part by political repression and natural disasters on the island. These include the repressive regimes of Francois Duvalier in the 1950s and 60s, followed by his son, Jean-Claude Duvalier, in the 1970s and 80s. Another wave of immigration, of course, was caused by the massive destruction of the earthquake in 2010, resulting in 217,000 deaths and leaving 1.5 million Haitians homeless. Over these decades, thousands fled and migrated to Boston. Boston actually has one of the highest populations of Haitian immigrants in the United States. And other parts of Massachusetts as well. The number of Haitians in Boston as of 2021 is over 23,000 persons. That's a significant increase from 2010 when it was just slightly over 13,000. And a little bit about Jamaican migration. Jamaicans have been immigrating to Boston for decades. The first significant wave was during World War II, when Jamaicans were migrating to the US to fulfill a workforce demand. And again, in the 1960s with the Immigration and Nationality Act, which essentially ended national quotas and provided more opportunities for individuals to migrate to where their families were. And unlike some other groups in the region, Jamaican immigrants actually have a tendency to stay in Boston and not move to other locations in greater Boston. Black census respondents who select Jamaican ancestry in 2020 are still primarily in Boston. And so lastly, I'd like to just discuss a little bit how a Latino and Caribbean Affairs Office would function. So in one way it could function is through language access support. The Office of Latino and Caribbean Affairs could provide technical support to agencies in the city of Boston to ensure that culturally and linguistically competent city services are delivered to Spanish-speaking and Haitian Creole-speaking residents. The Office of Latino and Caribbean Affairs could focus on establishing partnerships, engaging residents in the city, and disseminating information to the city's Latino and Caribbean residents to increase their knowledge of and how to access vital programs and services available to them. The office could also recommend policies and programs that will improve service to Latino and Caribbean residents by developing and advancing legislative agendas of policy proposals that are important to both communities, to collect and share statistics about the status of Latino and Caribbean residents, which, as we see with the disparities, is incredibly important, and also distributing information about programs, grants, and contracting opportunities to the community. And I will conclude by saying that Latinos and Caribbeans are two growing populations in our city, right together, making up, well, Caribbean alone, 30%. They are our neighbors, our coworkers. They make vital contributions to our city, and there's much more potential for prosperity and well-being. The city is bound together with the future of Boston's Latino and Caribbean communities. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I'm going to go to Danielle as a panelist, and then I'm going to go to Councilor Rowell, and I just want to note we've been joined by Councilor Fernandez-Anderson. So Danielle, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. I do not have a presentation, but this meeting is very important, as I am West Indian, and I also am Afro-Latino. My mother is from Honduras and my father is from Trinidad. So this affects me in many different ways. And seeing that there is a hearing on something like this is exciting and also very cautionary, because we want to make sure that when we are speaking about both, even though we have a lot of similarities, that we are paying attention to the nuances of both groups when it comes to them. My mostly concerns are making sure that this group or this office, when it is established, is that we do have resources and programming, especially when it comes to businesses, health, and wealth. We are top 3 for West Indian and Caribbean population and Latinx population. And those are really big groups. Even though Boston is small, we are still big in stature. So when it comes to business, health, and wealth, and overall quality of life, we want to make sure that that's addressed in specific needs. When it comes to a lot of our businesses are not traditional, they're more often very food-based, and making sure that programming and resources around getting those types of businesses established and ready for both vending or brick and mortars or whatever that may come in is addressed, and that there is a specific person or a group of people that are there to assist and with those things. Also, when it comes to health and wealth, we know that we are Both groups are very large homeowners when it's compared to the whole other diasporas and other groups. And when it comes to health needs, we want to make sure that resources are being put together and really intentional about what those things look like. Also, when it comes to policy that is fair and unbiased to not just one person or island or one group of people. We know that CARICOM in itself consists of 15 different islands, and we want to make sure that although very relatable and commonalities exist, that they do often come with different thresholds for different barriers for different resources and information seeking. Like one of the panelists said before, not all of us are immigrants. A lot of us are second generation of these cultures that have a lot of needs that still reflect our immigrant parents and what they come from. And there's a lot of need that still goes into each and one of those things. And then lastly, just need positions specifically for the Caribbean and for the Latino communities. We have been led by a few, and in each group, we know that who those people are, and it needs to be more widespread. There needs to be someone that is appointed, someone that is neutral, and someone that addresses direct problems intentionally and makes sure that, concerns are heard and respected. And that is not just for one person. So I'm excited about having this Office of Affairs that specifically meet to the needs of both of these groups, but also being very intentional about making sure that although they are lumped together, that we are intentionally separating the different nuances that these two groups have aside from each other. That's that. I'll keep it very brief in that. I have very specific concerns, but I also am very, very excited that this is being put to the table and that we are really thinking intentionally and community-wise of how this office can work together, how this office can keep its separation as well, and how no one gets left behind in that. In the words of our great counselor, all means all when it comes to these specific groups, and that we are paying attention to all of the things that go into what comprises of these cultures, traditions, and this heritage. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I want to give Councilor Worrell, when I went to you earlier, you had a disconnectivity issue, I think. Just as an original sponsor, if you'd like to make a statement, and then I'm going to go to folks in order of arrival for questions or statements.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to everyone that is here, and thank you to my co-sponsors on pushing this work forward, and to all the panelists that presented a lot of great information, and just speaks to the need of having this office. As pointed out, there's a lot of needs, there's cultural, language, needs that, that was presented today. Also some financial needs and education needs. And I think that this office right here is needed just because of the gaps that has been identified in the city of Boston of no one speaking to the needs of our community. So I'm a big advocate for this. For me, it's all about the details right now on how we make sure that when we're building out this office that we have, each community has a point person to really champion the legislative needs and policy recommendations so that the Trinidadians, so that the Bajans, so that the Jamaicans, so that every Latinx community feels welcomed here in the city of Boston. So I'm encouraged. For me, most of my questions just comes out for the details because as we've seen throughout these presentations by our panelists and advocates, that it's wanted and that it's needed here in the city of Boston. So just looking forward to the working session to hash out more of the details on what this office could look like. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Worrell. With that, I want to open it up to our councilors. I'm going to start with the original sponsors, and then I'm going to go by order of arrival for who is still here. Councilor Mejia, the floor is yours for any questions you might have.
Yeah, so I just wanted to just start off and just in deep gratitude to the panelists for really helping level set what it is that we're trying to do here and the why, and really laying it into the intentionality around what we need to do to meet the moment. And I think that you, in each of your remarks, really help underscore that that the city is the city of Boston has always been a city that prides itself in being welcoming to everyone. And what I always like to say is that we are resource rich, but coordination poor. So that when it comes to really providing service, that there are some folks who usually get left out. And I think that for me, and I've only been in office for 3.5 years, I lead with a sense of urgency because there's been so many groups that have been left out. And so I'd love to hear from the panelists as we start thinking about, right now we're calling it the Office of Latino and Caribbean Affairs, right? And this could look like many things. It could be 2 positions, one that focuses on the Latinx community, one that focuses on the Caribbean community that does policy and programming. There's also other examples right now in the city that they're thinking of cultural liaisons. And while I do appreciate the cultural liaison model, I would love to hear from you all, how can we strengthen it from a policy perspective, right? Because one thing is to create programming for communities, and the other is to really be super intentional about policy making. So I'm curious, as we continue to talk through and finalize the language and put something forth that makes sense, what will be your recommendations from a policy perspective in terms of would it be having a position that is dedicated to policy and a position dedicated to programming? Is it having the positions dedicated to the actual group of individuals that you're trying to serve? Kind of like, in practice, what would you think would be the best way to construct something like this? I know it took me a while to get that out, but basically I'd just love to hear from you all. What would the implementation look like for it to be set up for success? And that could be anyone. And Andrew, I see you have your hand up, so let's go to you first.
Thank you so much, Councilor Mejia. In terms of policy, we need to look at the overview. One, you're very good. You're passionate about education. We can look at, sorry. Sorry, I'm downtown in the city of Boston. So looking at policy in terms of education, curriculums, after school programs, how are those curriculums? Is it cultural competent in terms of, is it inclusive? Do we have teachers like our face that are in school that are able to adapt to the variety of intakes of various Caribbean American and Latino students, kids who are entering into the educational system? So that's one thing that policy can look at in terms of shaping the curriculum, overviewing, see if it's adaptable, it is being able to fit the intakes of our Caribbean American community. What does it entail? Do we have programs that pertaining to after-school program that the kids can do? Another thing too is in terms of city services, access to these services. Is it available? How is it transition to the community? Enhance the neighborhood services that the city of Boston has. There's assignment, different neighborhood system. How is that working? Are those policies that are in place adaptable? Then when you look at housing, there's a housing crisis. That's something that Mayor and Councilor Worrell speaks about. Home ownership. How can we increase those home ownership for Caribbean American community? Part of prosperity for our community. So those are some of the things that we can look at pertaining to a policy issue in that office.
Thank you for that. I see Dr. Rivera and Dr. Estrella and Danielle. All of y'all got.
Oh, everybody likes this question. So what I'm going to do is we're just going to go in order from Dr. Rivera to Dr. Estrella Luna to Danielle Johnson. And then Julia, if you have any other questions, but right now it's I believe me, you, Councilor Worrell, and Councilor Fernandez-Anderson. So there's a little bit more time for questions if folks have them. So we're going to start with Dr. Rivera, then Dr. Estrella Luna, then Danielle. You guys can jump right in after the last person finished.
Well, I'll be really brief because really a lot of what was just said is what I was going to speak about in terms of policy, but just taking housing just as a real focal point where the primary groups of our Latinx and Caribbean communities are renters, and the lack of affordable housing. And you know, it's ironic that it's also our small business owners, our immigrant-owned businesses that end up revitalizing, you know, areas like Maverick Square, Jackson Square, and then, you know, we can't afford to live there anymore as the property values increase because of our contributions. So I think those are issues that are policy issues, and that we could, through this office, really identify those needs very specifically, because I know from the education aspect that for some reason Salvadoreños are just, their educational outcomes are just so much worse than other groups. And so if we understand then those differences, whether it's barriers to housing or education opportunities, you know, policy is where that's where we really affect change. We definitely need programming and the coordination of those services, but I think we can go really deeper into the policy that are needed, right, to address some of these socioeconomic inequalities. And I'll turn it to my esteemed colleague, Dr. Nina.
Thank you, Dr. Rivera. So I as Councilor Mejia knows, I'm a policy scholar, and I do a lot of organizational development work and redevelopment work. So the question of structure is very important. And you're right, you could actually structure this office so that it's sort of people focused. You could structure it so that it's space or place focused, or you could structure it in terms of policy issue areas, right? And each of those has strengths and weaknesses. I think you know, my neighbor here, Danielle Johnson, pointing out that not just the diversity of people here, but making sure that things are done in a way that we don't narrow the gatekeeping that has a tendency to happen in all of our communities, I think is a really important thing to think about when you structure this office, which might then lead you away from more of a, you know, community-centric way of organizing it, to having, you know, Central American office and you know, Spanish-speaking Latino Caribbean office and a South American office. That might not necessarily, that might actually create unintended consequences. I think it's worth thinking about structuring this office in a way that is more sort of issue area focused, right? Because there's, you know, the issues around education and around youth and young adults, the issues for small business owners, you know, Danielle and I are both small business owners, and, you know, we know the struggle of what it means to be women who are business owners, right? And so that's a whole different area than dealing with, you know, health and safety separate from law enforcement, which is a whole other issue that also needs to be dealt with. So I would encourage you to think about maybe structuring the office around policy areas and structuring this so there maybe is a policy area, but also an internal facing program and practice support. Because again, the city itself, if we're going to move in an anti-racist, equity-centering way of doing things, folks in the city need support. And all the different offices, the Equity Office, MOYA, the LCA Office, the Language Assistance Office, all of them need to kind of start coordinating together in order to provide that kind of support for all of the different agencies and departments and offices within the city. So I would really encourage you to think in terms of having a policy office that can provide support or sponsor research that does maybe equity assessments around either policy proposals or existing policies, that can do both needs and opportunity assessments for different communities, because, you know, I'm actually kind of struck that the Trinidadian and Tobagoan community is doing comparatively better than the Haitian community. Like, that is something that there's opportunities to learn there, and there's needs that need attention there, right? So an office that, you know, that kind of has focus on that, and another set of people who are looking internally and providing support internally, and also are liaisons to the rest of us, so that, you know, as I mentioned in the last hearing, in some of the things that I have been brought into in the advocacy for the Latinx community, especially here in East Boston, it would have been great for folks to have had somebody to go to that's not just MOYA, to help us navigate all of these complex processes. So, so I think that would be a structure that's worth thinking about. And I think, I will say though, the way that the ordinance is currently structured allows for different possibilities. So to the extent that this could be something that is just sort of part of the record and hopefully can direct how the office is eventually structured, I'm not convinced that the structure needs to be actually in the ordinance itself, because that also is dangerous. It concretizes structures that doesn't allow for learning and evolution to happen. So I will go ahead and, Ms. Johnson.
You pretty much hit the nail on the head. Programming, policy, and making sure that although this is one office, that we are specifically and intentionally looking at all the different sectors within that. And it can get overwhelming for one person to do, so making sure that it is supported, whoever is appointed or when that is supported. One of my biggest pause for the cause. Happy Independence Day to Trinidad, who is celebrating 61 years of independence today. And there's a flag raising down at City Hall, so I wanted to point that out too. But even things like that, you know, making sure, I think Councilor Worrell said something about media, and making sure that, you know, when things happen within our community, when policies are changing, that it is widespread and known, and not just a certain group knows, and that we put a lot of effort to making sure that resources are widespread and that they are, that people know about them, especially when this office has things going on, that there is some type of pipeline, or that information is gone down, and it's not one person making decisions, but that it is looked at holistically when within those individual committees, however this is structured. So I do agree with a lot of things that the doctor said, and I'll kind of end it there. Sorry.
Thank you so much. Councilman Mejia, do you have another question, or are we
I want to be mindful of time, and I want to just really thank our panelists for bringing so much thought and perspective into this. And I really do appreciate the idea that this is a living and an evolving situation. And when we're making policy, we have to always be reflective of, like, if this is the intention that we want, how we're going to measure the impact that we're making and how we're going to pivot. And I think that that's one of the most important things in the policymaking space that I don't see much of, because we think once it's done, but we need to continue to evaluate what it is that we're doing and pivot accordingly. So I love the whole idea of establishing something and then writing it in a way that says, let's evaluate to see, are we meeting these benchmarks? Are we really meeting the moment? And what do we need to do in the next 6 months, right? Or the next iteration of this to really reset. So I think that that is a really important part of the policymaking process. And I really love the flexibility of that, because nothing should ever be final. We should always continue to be open to the evolution of it. And I see, Andrew, you have your hand up, so I'm going to be quiet because Councilor Arroyo is the facilitator of this, and he's going to put me on mute if I don't shut myself up.
I was getting close because we got a 1 o'clock hard stop. So, and I want to make sure we get to community comment too. Mr. Sharp.
One of the things too, we have to focus not just only policy, but community development. We see we have pockets of Caribbean community throughout the city of Boston. Mattapan, Roxbury, Rosendale, High Park, those are predominantly high communities. So how are these communities are serviced? Is there enough healthcare services there that our community can get access? One prime example that we had worked on was the vaccine initiative to ensure that our community gets vaccinated. So that too, we got to focus on community development. How are we having more of our folks who have established and who have developed these communities, according to Dr. Naaman, is able to live there, who have been contributing the development of Mattapan. How is it beautification of our community climate resilience, and all of those stuff. So that's also something that we got to focus on and see that office can play a very critical role in terms of making sure funding and access to services for those communities are available. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go to Councilor Worrell. If you have any questions for the panel or any comments, and then Councilor Fernandez-Anderson.
No questions at this time, Chair. I am currently driving to City Hall to attend the Trinidadian flag raising, but I want to thank all the panelists for sharing all the information that they shared today. I do believe that, it's where I would love to see the structures kind of similar to what I've been hearing is, policy, community development, making sure that Boston is more of a welcoming place for Caribbeans and also for the Caribbeans that are here and that are coming into Boston. How do we make sure that we always pride ourselves on our diversity, on our rich culture, but how do we make sure that, our policy is reflective of that and that we're setting up all the support to help people in Boston thrive when it comes to, housing, education, small business support, and that information is shared, throughout our communities in an equitable way. So I love what I'm hearing. For me, it's all about the details on how we, structure this department in office and what it looks like, and that we're not also being duplicative of any other efforts that are out there. So looking forward to continued conversations in this working session.
Thank you, Councilor Worrell. Councilor Fernandez-Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Apologies for the delayed tech here. Good morning, everyone, and appreciate the co-sponsors or the lead sponsors who filed this. I guess, just off the top of my head, I think that, this warrants a longer conversation. I really appreciated, I forget the name of the presenter, Ms. Ortiz, Wyatt, Bianca, and as well as Ms. Johnson, for your presentation. Of course, our dear friend from Authentic Caribbean Foundation as well. And I think off the top of my head, just thinking about understanding just the diversity within the Caribbean diaspora. And I guess it's, saying Latino and Caribbean in itself, I think, feels counterintuitive to the public, at least the feedback that I've been getting from my constituents, understanding that if it's Caribbean, then it's all Caribbean, but then is this encompassing the larger diaspora, Latino diaspora, also South America, also of Spaniard descent from anywhere else. And so just understanding the emphasis on the need to address the uniqueness on the diversity, and then looking at, reviewing current initiatives that already exist in comparison to the need. Healthcare access and cultural competency. Specifically, we know that because the Latino and Caribbean diaspora is such a diverse population, they come with certain cultural nuances when it comes to healthcare. So having services that are culturally competent to address or to support with healthcare access, as well as, like post-COVID or now long COVID responses, vaccination equity, and so forth. So I think I'm more interested in the further conversation. It feels like this is the first conversation, obviously, but then it feels like, there's just so many layers to this thing that we couldn't possibly just narrow it down to one conversation. As the panelists so eloquently already presented, the intersectionality of education and health literacy, but affordable housing and livability, youth empowerment and education, and looking at all of these different intersectionalities and figuring out, how are we readying our services or making them accessible. And I think accessibility just doesn't mean like, free, or that we're making something available, like, for example, if it's digital, that we are giving computer or free internet, but that we are creating platforms, and then that we are then training people to make this user-friendly, and then that we are going even further to creating transparency in terms of what's available. So I think about dashboards that could actually provide these information so that it's fully transparent, but again, also the platform should be interactive so that we are intentionally creating this comprehensive plan or services and making it more dynamic than just, call City Hall or figuring out where services are available for people. So just to narrow down all of that down, to make all of these services long-term sustainable, there needs to be a systemic change, right? To discuss, the plans for integrating our broader concerns around urban planning and development that is inclusive of our Caribbean brothers and sisters, equitable resource allocation, creating the platform, and also transparency so that we are communicating what the access is, how to utilize it, and how to properly navigate those resources. When we talk about coordination, then intentionality means that we are building the tools, that we are equipping our people in order to do that. Just my thoughts for now, and again, I don't want this conversation to be a rushed one where we just sort of do a one-off and we come in and we say, make certain points, but that this should be the beginning of continuity for how we're going to intentionally build out those policies that both Councilor Mejia and Councilor Worrell are mentioning in their filing. Thank you.
Thank you. Just want to know I'm also original sponsor. No
Thank
worries.
you. My apologies, Mr. Chair.
So I'm gonna go with so folks understand we moved this from 10 to 11 so that the administration can join us. We have a hard stop at 1. What I want to do at this time is pivot to community comment, and then hopefully the administration has joined us by the time that is done, and we will go to the administration for questions. I'm going to go to, I believe Councilman has her hand raised.
Yes, I wanted to acknowledge that Councilor Estrella, oh my God, Dr. Estrella Luna, I just promoted you without you having to run for
Don't wish such things on me, Councilor Mejia, please. I thought you loved me.
your hand up, and I wasn't sure if you wanted to reflect or react to any of the things that my colleague, Councilor Anderson, said before we pivot over to public testimony.
Yes, I just want to point out one thing that I really appreciate in the ordinance as it's currently drafted, and to make sure that it's on the record and anybody listening right now understands this. But the way that in this proposed ordinance, Latino and Caribbean is defined is any person whose heritage, descent, or origin is from the Western Hemisphere, excluding Canada and the United States. So it would not include Spaniards, for example. It really only addresses pretty much all the peoples south of the border, which is, as you know, as we mentioned earlier, and as Councillor Fernandez Anderson mentions, it's a complex community, language-wise, cultural-wise, as we conceive of it in the United States, race-wise. And so, but that's also why an Office of Latino and Caribbean Affairs is actually needed as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, just for clarity. No, I totally understand the Spaniards are not Hispanics or Latinos or Latinx or Afro-Caribbean. I'm saying that there are descendants that I just wanted to know exactly what we were encompassing, since Caribbean meant automatically certain, certain Latin diaspora, but just wanted to understand if that also extended to South America. But thank you for that clarity. I must have missed a part of a Western Hemisphere, and appreciate that.
Thank you. And with that, I know we've had folks who patiently waited in community. The administration has joined us, but I'm going to go to the community comment while she gets set up. If you can bring up Darren Fenty and Shirley Shillingford and Doug Chavez, those three, and then we'll do the next three after that. Thank you. I'm going to go quick ground rules for public comment. We have a 2-minute timeline.
Recording in progress.
I guess we weren't recording, but we have a 2-minute timeline for folks who are speaking with public comment. Please just say your name, and if you are speaking on behalf of an organization, please state that organization as well, just so everybody's clear. If you're speaking on behalf of yourself, you don't have to do that. Just state your name and jump into your comments. I'm going to start with Shirley Shillingford.
Yes, my name is Shirley Shillingford. I have been working with the City of Boston for the past 48 years, and I work for Boston Public Health, where I serve diverse community in making sure that our residents of Boston gets proper nutrition and food. And I also do a cultural event called the Caribbean American Carnival. But I'm not speaking about the Caribbean American Carnival at this time. I'm looking at the office, and my concern, it says Caribbean and Latinas. And I feel that the first thing I want to say is that I would like to see a Caribbean liaison and a Latina liaison, because both of them will definitely address the needs of each entity. In terms of diversity, the Caribbean is very, very diverse. And all of us, although we might be related, we have different cultural, we have different ways of even education. If you're looking at education, I know in the state, they always have an educational piece there for immigrants who come from the Caribbean, in terms of education. I don't know if it still exists. It was always something that existed, because I remember Dr. Doreen Wilkerson and Dr. Munoz Bennett used to used to work on that. So, I'm just concerned, about the two offices being together. I think that it's good for them to be, but it has to be separate, because the Latina, they have different kind of backgrounds of Latinas, and you have different backgrounds of Caribbeaners as well. And each one of those islands, they have different needs, especially just coming to this country. I mean, I have been here over 50 years, and I've worked in City of Boston for 48 of those years. So I want people to look at it, since we are like, so many, 58% of Caribbeaners are here, and I want us to think of policy when we are setting up an office like that, to make sure that each of these Caribbean groups are identified and their needs are met, because it's important. So I'm just very concerned about that, and I think that it needs further conversation so that we can have further clarity around both of these pieces. So, this certainly cannot be the only forum that we are going to have for this. And I want to thank all of the panelists who came on and who spoke. Everybody has great ideas, but we need those things to put to work. The other thing I want to talk about a little bit is affordable housing. There's no such thing, in my opinion, as affordable housing, because, every politician talk about affordable housing and how we do for affordable housing. If you even rent, they're going to rent to fit the criteria of the federal government, and then they go right back to market rate. It's the same people that are going to be in those places. And so I think we need to change this affordable housing into something else that will really, really benefit the people here. Rents are extraordinarily high for people. They can't, even city workers. And so therefore we need to look at these things. And I will hope that we will have dialogue another time rather than only this time.
Thank you, Ms. Schillingford. We certainly, I don't expect this to be the last time we have this conversation. Thank you for logging in and your patience and watching the hearing and making your thoughts clear. Thank you very much. We're gonna go to Doug Chavez, because I see you teed up.
Good afternoon, everyone. I just want to thank everyone for letting me, hope everyone can hear me okay. I don't have the best reception where I'm at right now. But I want to thank the co-sponsors, Council Arroyo, Council Worwell, and Council Mejia, and thank you all for the opportunity to testify here. I try not to take up too much of the time. To me, this office, whether it's one or two offices, this conversation is a great start. As Council Arroyo just said, hopefully we'll have many more conversations, whether it's one office, two offices, or more offices. I think it's a no-brainer. I think I've been a long-time resident, 18-year resident of Boston, East Boston, long-time East Boston resident, current Hyde Park resident, and I can't tell you how many times Latino community leaders, Latino residents, Latino media feel they are not heard in the city of Boston, whether it's the Menino administration, whether it's Walsh administration, or the current administration. We feel we are left out often. And if you look at all the metrics that a lot of my panelists have pointed out, which I won't go over, at every level, the stats, the data don't lie. We are under-resourced, under-financed, underrepresented, lack of housing opportunities, access, healthcare access, economic opportunity. As a small business owner, I see it myself. It is a struggle trying to even get access to contracts at the city or state level. So this office to me is a no-brainer, and we're not trying to shame anyone, but we should all be embarrassed at this in 2023, that we need this office, that as Latinos and Caribbeans are a rising population in the city of Boston. I think it's a no-brainer, and anyone that pushes back, it's a shame, because the data does not lie. Whether we have one office, two offices, like I said, that's a conversation for the future. I think, as Council Mejia says, we shouldn't be pitted against each other. Our African-American brothers and sisters, our Asian-American brothers and sisters. I think we all need representation. We all have different issues. And as Sister Schillingford says, yes, we all have different issues that need to be addressed, but there are also a lot of similarities. So I hope that we can continue this conversation. I hope that we bring more leaders from the community to speak, invite more leaders from the community, from ethnic media, because they have not felt heard in many years. And I think it's time, and I'm not saying this is going to be the answer, but I think if the city of Boston creates this office or offices, it's a sign in the right direction. I'm tired of hearing from mayors or, hey, look at the Latinos we have hired. I don't want to hear about a few hires. Yes, that's great. Policy, how policy that affects our communities. I want to see offices such be enacted. I want to see how our greater community policies that affect our greater community, not just a few hires. So while a few hires are great that you can point to in your administration, please stop pointing at that. A lot of us want to see policy and offices such as these enacted. So please, I think it's a no-brainer, and I look forward to continuing this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chavez. And we haven't spoken since, but my condolences on the loss of your father. Mr. Winfield.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Winfield Warren Prass. I am a parent, school administrator in the Boston Public Schools, as well as president of the Boston Society of Caribbean Culture and Heritage. And I'd first like to thank the sponsors of this piece of legislation for bringing together the panel, bringing together this opportunity for us to discuss this very important issue. I'm sharing comments through all my roles, I guess, as concerned community member, parent, member, again, of the Boston Public School system, as well as community organizer. I believe that this office will serve, undoubtedly many roles, and, the panelists, spoke very eloquently and expertly about, the different functions, the different benefits that this office can serve. I want to, echo all those sentiments. Boston is certainly undergoing a number of changes in terms of addressing, systemic issues. I can speak directly some of those changes through our public school system, moving towards, becoming an anti-racist system by tackling, again, deep-rooted systemic challenges. I see some of the same efforts being made on a more sort of macro level within the city. And in order for us to have, sort of widespread, profound change, we really have to address issues and take on, widespread, profound solutions. And I see this office as being, one of those efforts, being, a step in the right direction to address a very specific but very significant need. No need for me to reiterate the details, again, that the panelists already shared, but we all know that our community is very diverse, coming with a number of complex challenges that are very unique, and a mayoral office of affairs, Latino and Caribbean affairs, whether it's, again, one individual, co-directors, however it's structured, will certainly be beneficial in addressing the needs of the members of our community. So I don't want to take up too much time because I'm also present at the Trinidad and Tobago flag raising ceremony right outside of City Hall, but I did want to share those comments and echo, the sentiments and the messaging that was shared by the panelists, and to let the audience know, councilors, that there is widespread support for such an office within the Caribbean community. I'm assuming it will be the same within the Latino community, because we understand that in order for us to progress, we have to have structures and resources in place that support policies that, downstream will work to our benefit. So I thank you all for the opportunity. Thank you for putting together this panel, for working this piece of legislation. And I hope that we will be successful, and anything that we can do as an organization, again, the Boston Society of Caribbean Culture and Heritage, we are willing to support, because we see this as being an instrumental piece of policy that can move things forward for our community.
Thank you, Mr. Winfield.
Thank you.
I'm going to go to Ms. Reyes.
And Councilor Burrell, excuse me, Councilor Arroyo, I want to let you know that Darren is in the attendees section. He declined promotion of panelist. I'm not sure if he wants to comment still or not, but he has to accept promotion of panelist. Okay, so those folks who are tuning in need to know that if you have signed up, you have to accept the invitation. Yeah, if whoever's working that on Central side, if you can extend the invitation to panelists again for Mr. Fenty. In the meantime, Ms. Reyes, and then Ms. Simpson.
Buenos días a todos, mi nombre es Reina Reyes. Discúlpenme no poner mi cámara, pero no fue una noche muy buena para mí. Bueno, como estaba diciendo, mi nombre es Reina Reyes, soy organizadora, activista, vivo hace 20 años aquí en East Boston. He visto el impacto económico y la segregación de las comunidades menos privilegiadas. Una crisis muy crítica sobre
¿Me da
mi...
tiempo, por favor? Lo siento.
Sí.
Gracias. Good morning, everyone. I'm sorry that I'm not going to turn my video on. I didn't have a good night. So again, my name is Reina Reyes. I'm an organizer, I'm an activist, and I estado en East Boston por 6 años.
20 años.
So, perdón. And I've been in East Boston for 20 years. And I just want to talk about the financial impact that the community is having in the segregation. Continúe, por favor. Continue, please.
Sí, he visto el impacto económico y la segregación de las comunidades menos privilegiadas, una crisis muy crítica sobre mis comunidades latino-caribeñas.
I've seen the economic impact that my Caribbean Latinx community is having, which is it's a crisis. Adelante.
Estoy apoyando el DOC 1300 porque pienso que esta propuesta va a ser con el fin de avanzar en la unidad y en la integración política, económica, social y cultural.
And I'm supporting Docket 1300 because I think that it will help with the advancement of the community, not only like the political, cultural, economic, so forth. Adelante.
Y estoy pensando que esto va a aumentar el bienestar y calidad de vida de la comunidad latino-caribeña y el crecimiento económico de la región de Boston.
And I think that this will increase the quality of life of Caribbean and Latinx communities and also the growth of the community.
Y así promover el desarrollo independiente, sostenible y sobre la base de la democracia.
And thus to promote self-sufficient and to be sustainable and also which is the base of democracy.
La equidad y la más amplia justicia social, sin segregar otras comunidades y culturas.
And also equality, that we should amplify this without segregating other communities.
Gracias a la concejal Julia Mejía y otros por levantar la voz latino-caribeño con gratitud.
Thank you to Councilor Mejia for speaking up for the Caribbean Latino community. Thank you. I'm grateful. Termino, ¿verdad?
Thank you.
Sí.
Thank you. Ms. Simpson?
Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Tian Simpson. I am the Executive Director of Hyde Park Main Street. And of course, being Director of Hyde Park Main Street, my main focus is on small businesses. And I believe that this is a very, very important office that would be so helpful to our Latino and Caribbean small business owners. During the pandemic and subsequent months afterwards where grants were coming out, our Latino and Caribbean business owner had the most challenging time applying for grants. And there was no specific office that could provide assistance. As a director of Hyde Park Main Street, we realized that they were losing out on on opportunities. So in 2021, after the first round PPP, we created a task force specifically for this, and Hyde Park Main Street, along with Hyde Park Board of Trade, Southwest Boston CDC, we also met with LISC and JP Neighborhood Development Corp, and even BECMA to brainstorm and come up with ways on how we can help the small business owners. And had there been an office already in place, maybe it wouldn't have been as challenging. So the fact that we're even thinking about creating this special office, I think is a wonderful idea, and is definitely going to be life-changing for some of these small business owners. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see Mr. Fenty, you joined. The floor is yours.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? Sorry for joining now. As we all know, we're all working, balancing things at the same time. But I just want to say, I believe this office is extremely important. So I commend you, Arroyo, Julia, Worrell, everyone else who's involved with this. It's a need that has been missing from the city for a long time, real representation for Caribbean and Latin folks. For several years, from the time we've come here, from several exchanges, we've always felt left behind when it comes to our education, economic empowerment, just the whole aspect of Boston and America in general is come to America, you can thrive, you can learn, you can build upon your heritage, you can bring your family over, but that's always been a struggle for any type of Caribbean folk or Latin diaspora. And it's strange that that's really our whole cause is inclusiveness. Boston's a safe haven. We invite everyone here, but once they come here, the services are lacking. So I'm hoping from this group, to answer Julia's question several minutes ago about if the office should have one person to delegate for the Caribbean side, or if one person also should be for the Latin side, I do feel like that's a strong point. And whoever that person is has to be tested, tried, and true throughout the community, vouched for, someone who's actually been in the streets talking to the various communities. For example, Mattapan, up and down Blue Hill Ave to various Haitian shops, not only just speaking on Haitian Americans, Jamaicans or Trinidadians, also the smaller islands as well. Each one of them has different causes and concerns. So just someone who has lived it, listens to the community, who's actually outside and not afraid to speak to the people. Yes, there are language barriers, but we can work through that. Where this something that I talk to myself about, I call it common customs. That's one thing that everyone in the diaspora has. We have common customs that precipitates culture, meaning that our culture is important to us from all angles. I don't want to take up too much time, but education, job accessibility, interpreters to know when you're going to health services, if you're being advocated for correctly, everything across the board, to be honest, any situation you could think of, the Caribbean and Latin community needs help in. So we just need someone who the community relates to, who knows, not someone from outside the city who just moved here and they have credentials, someone who's actually in the streets who can listen to the concerns that we've been talking about for years and just push it forward. And also someone who's not afraid of actual city hall. We work for the people, not for the mayor or the chief or whoever else is in staff. You got to be able to stand up, say yes and no, because you're speaking for the people. And that's all I'll say right now. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe we have Mr. Vega. Is Al Vega here?
Thank you, Councilor Arroyo. Yes, good morning, good afternoon, city councilors. My name is Al Vega. I am currently the president of the Greater Boston LACLA chapter, which is the Labor Council for Latin American Advancement. We want to express to you and our community that the labor movement supports all efforts to strengthen the working families in our city, and our organization also does this, but with a focus on Latinx families and workers. LACLA works in collaboration with local unions and workers centers in the spirit of fraternity and solidarity. We dedicate ourselves to learning, practicing, and perfecting our skills in the profession of our choosing that we hope ultimately improves the quality of life of all workers in our city. We are proud to be a diverse workforce of different races, religions, languages, and beliefs that fight for better working conditions for all our community members. To this end, we encourage collective bargaining efforts in any workplace where there's no union representation. We also want to work together with our city officials and leaders to address issues that affect our city's economic growth, social stability, and environmental sustainability. These are just some of the core issues that affect our nation and community, including those in the Latino and Caribbean communities of our city. Unless we work together to find collective solutions and strategies to combat these issues, our efforts will be inadequate. As such, we are in favor of the establishment of an Office of Latino and Caribbean Affairs in our city so that a space can exist within the current infrastructure of the city's administration to focus on the needs of these communities. Should an office like this become a reality, we are hopeful in the near future that perhaps there might be a citywide summit held nearby to advocate for cutting-edge, scalable solutions to empower and grow our workforce. We would engage different trade unions, community organizations, educational institutions, and industry leaders to ask about the impacts that these sectors have made on the issues that are most related to our city's growth. If we welcome new talent and innovation, we can incentivize growth in our communities. It's the individuals within our organizations that have contributed towards the health and welfare of our city. There are many Latinx and Caribbean leaders within our organizations who are passionate about the work they do. Their dedication is heroic, and they have transformed our society with love, compassion, and perseverance during times of hardship. And we need to create the spaces to foster leadership skills and allow for more collective work to foment in an office where there's dedication and commitment to the Latino and Caribbean working families throughout the city. Events such as the summit, as I mentioned, will also be able to help identify individuals and organizations that have demonstrated leadership skills in their respective fields and can impact their communities and develop that leadership via grants and other initiatives that might be available via this office. As we ask that our voices be heard and interests represented, we also want to express our gratitude with the City of Boston's workers and the collective bargaining agreements they have fought for, which are an effective resource in achieving social justice. We are aware that some of our brothers and sisters, including those from our treasurers union, SEIU Local 888, who still do not have a contract, and it has almost been 3 years, and despite reaching an agreement, are still waiting to be made whole via those negotiations that occurred. So let us hope that these agreements are settled relatively soon so that workers can access the wages and benefits that they deserve. We hope that a proposal for this office is just one of the ways that we can close the economic divide that plagues our communities. So let's continue to find ways to bring inclusion, prosperity, and sustainability for our city's Latinx and Caribbean families, such as this office, which will forge a sustainable and prosperous future for all of our city's residents. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Vega. I believe we have left Gloria Rivera, and then I'm going to go to Maria Angelis from the administration so that she can say her piece, and then Councilor Mejia can ask questions. Gloria, the floor is yours.
Hi.
Hello? Yep.
Good morning. Yes, I'm here.
Yep.
Y tú puedes hablar en español, Gloria.
Tú puedes hablar en español. Tenemos a alguien que puede traducir, pero dale tiempo para decir lo que tú dijiste. Después que
Y nada más tiene 2 minutos, Gloria, porque tenemos poco tiempo, que mi amor, para que lo sepa.
Está bien, gracias. Muchas gracias por permitirme participar en este panel. He oído todo lo que han dicho todos. Muy importante lo que dijo el último señor. Y gracias por tomarse el tiempo para ver la necesidad que tenemos nosotros los latinos, y creo que sería muy bueno para todos tener una oficina latina en el City Hall.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to participate, and it's very important, especially with what the last person said. thank you for taking the time. And also, I would like to see if we can create an office to address the need of the Latino community within City Hall.
Mi nombre es Gloria Rivera, tengo más de 30 años viviendo en la ciudad de Boston, tengo un negocio en la ciudad de Austin por más de 16 años y por eso sé las necesidades que tenemos nosotros como latinos que vinimos a esta ciudad de Massachusetts.
So again, my name is Gloria Rivera, and I've been living in Boston for over 30 years. And I also have a business in Alston, and the business has been there for more than 16 years. And that's why, because we come for the need that the Latino people have.
Y eso sería bueno para todos, no solamente para los latinos. Sería muchas facilidades, incluso para los líderes que están en el City Hall, porque se le haría más fácil que la información les llegue a ellos de la comunidad de afuera y no tienen que estar todo el tiempo esperando que los demás le digan lo que la comunidad necesita.
And also, this would be good for everyone, not just the Latino community, and also it would be good for the leaders that are within City Hall, because it would be easier to get the information out, to get it to the people, instead of the people waiting for anybody for them to tell them about the need of this information.
Entonces creo que sí, porque también hay muchos jóvenes, no solamente que son los inmigrantes que necesitan eso. Hay muchos jóvenes latinos ya que han crecido de familias como yo, que tengo 30 años aquí, que tengo tres hijos. O sea que 30 años para acá, ya desde los 80, hay como ya generaciones que han nacido y han crecido aquí y hablan el idioma español y otros inmigrantes como los guatemaltecos y los colombianos y todo lo que tiene que ver la habla hispana. También tienen familias grandes que han hecho en este país, en este estado ya específicamente.
And also the youth, this is not just for immigrants. There's like a big population of youth that come from immigrant families. Like myself, I have 3 children because I've been here for more than 30 years. I've been here, came in the 80s. So a lot of the youth have been born and raised here. They speak Spanish and other languages, like people from Guatemala or Colombia or the Hispanic-speaking folks that they've established and created their families here in the state.
Y lo que yo he podido observar es que aquí hay muchos recursos para la comunidad, pero nunca le llega exactamente a quien tiene las necesidades. Y si tienen una oficina en el City Hall, todo el mundo sabe dónde se va a dirigir y de ahí entonces van a saber exactamente dónde están llegando los recursos y dónde no está llegando la información.
Thank you.
And also what I've been able to observe is that there's a lot of resources, but the issue is that those resources do not get to the community. They don't get to where the need is. So it's good to have an office within City Hall where people know where to go to get the information, get the resources are, and how to get it to the people, and where the resources are not getting to, or the information is not getting to the people. All set. ¿Ya terminó?
Sí, sí.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we hit our time. Thank you. I'm going to now give Maria Angeli Solis Severa the ability to give an opening, and then Councilor Mejia, any questions you may have. You're muted.
I know we're running low on time, so I just want to express my gratitude for everyone coming in today to share your perspectives, your concerns. Know that we are committed to continuing to change the way that some of our current policies, programs, and practices are being implemented throughout the city. And our mission as an equity cabinet is to ensure that we are improving social determinants of health for people of historically excluded communities, and that in particular also means the Latino community, the Caribbean community. We are taking some time to do research to ensure that we are making the best decisions to move the work forward. So this has been really helpful. Our team has been taking notes and just looking forward to the partnership with the council on this.
Thank you. Councilor Mejia, any questions you have for the administration?
Yes, I do, and I do appreciate all of the folks that have spoken already. And Maria Angeli, Chief, just wanted to. I've been in communication with the administration, and we've been talking about kind of like. So for me, I'm interested in figuring out how we make things work that works for everybody, right? And that everybody feels like they're winning. And that includes the administration, the community, and also the counselors that are working on this initiative, right? It has to be everyone feels like they are really part of the development process of this, right? So I really want to, in the spirit of that, really want to think about, we've heard from some folks talking about the cultural liaisons, right? And the need for more policy. And I know that you guys are working towards developing and strengthening that. So in the ideal world, when we're thinking about this is the first hearing, we're going to move into some working sessions. Would love to hear from your thoughts, like based on what you've heard. The data does not lie, the numbers do not lie. Like when you're thinking about how do we hold ourselves accountable to these communities in ways that are going to help close some of the gaps that we have been struggling with for decades. We're trying to address here decades of neglect for both the Latino community, the Caribbean community, all of our communities, to be honest with you. So I'm just curious about, like, what are some of the ways that you potentially see something like this in terms of co-governance and policymaking in a collaborative way? Like what you've heard from us, what you've heard from the community, and what you're seeing in your administration, kind of like where are some of the things where you could see us aligning?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. I'm thinking of the last hearing and somebody, I cannot remember who said this, but it's like, we don't really want to talk org charts. So this is not about org chart, but this is about governance and the decision we made to move the formerly known cultural liaisons from the Office of Neighborhood Services that has the neighborhood liaisons that, engage directly in sort of like emergencies and constituent services. The purpose of us moving them from that reactive space into the Equity and Inclusion Cabinet and the rebranding that it's going to be public in this moment, obviously, but moving more from a liaison into an advisory role. And so the rebrand we're working on is more of a cultural advisor model, led by a director of cultural affairs to ensure that these folks are actually engaging in ongoing communication with advisory groups. Some of the current advisors, formerly liaisons, have already kicked off some conversations depending on the culture that they represent, whether that's small business owners, whether that's some of the barbershop, hair salon owners, et cetera. Those conversations are starting to kick off just so we get a sense of like what is sustainable and what is the community really asking for when it comes to that type of engagement. But we are looking at a model where we have advisory groups per cultural advisor so that we can focus on some of the specific issues that have been named today. We've known that these are the issues that we are focusing on, hence the shift. And the three main buckets of work that these cultural advisors will be focused on is fostering a sense of belonging for the different communities that we all know are not a monolith. There isn't a single Vietnamese or Latino person that is the same as the next. So helping foster a sense of belonging, ensuring that every flag raising, we have City Hall fully decked out, people are outside and really enjoying one another. The second bucket, really focusing more on proactively delivering results to communities. So rather than saying, here's a program, come get it. Instead, we are outside in the communities where we know people are, right? Whether that's schools, whether that's barbershops, corner stores, et cetera. And the last but not least, which is the main shift, is this advising and informing of policy. They themselves are not policy experts. We are developing our policy shop to ensure that they have that skill set as well. but they are the ones engaging with community with this advisory group that would be meeting on a constant basis.
Yeah, so, and I really do appreciate you breaking that down. And I think what happens is that a lot of these things get lost in translation, right? And, you know, language is really important, especially if we're really looking towards meeting moments. And so I'm curious, because we're talking about advising, we established the Black Men's Commission, and that office has a $1.6 million budget. We established the Reparations Task Force with a lot of push and pull. And now we are here trying to create another avenue for the racial equity work to continue within this particular two different populations. I'm just curious, when you talk about advising, there's a difference between advisory groups and people who are set up to be real experts in policy spaces. So I'm curious what, if any, opportunities exist within the constructs that we're working right now. The language in the ordinance is still open for interpretation and to develop it in a way that's going to strengthen. So what would be some of the recommendations that you would make to strengthen the ordinance to help meet the goals and objectives that the administration is working towards? Because just for the record, everybody knows that that it's supposed to be co-governance, right? The city council is supposed to be working in direct partnership with the administration because we represent the folks that you all represent. So I'm just curious, what would be some of the feedback that you would give to make the current ordinance match a little bit more of some of the goals and objectives that you're working towards, so that we can edit the language to meet that?
Yeah, and I'll just say that we have a 1 o'clock hard stop, so answer this question and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, that's a really good specific question. So I'll make sure that our team gets together and sends the feedback back and ensures. But I will say that we've been waiting for Bianca's announcement. So Dr. Rivera, congratulations. I know that you all have been working really hard. This partnership is going to be essential for whatever the future of this conversation is. So our team will get back to you with specific recommendations.
So I know we have a time crunch, and we were really generous in terms of switching things around. And I really do feel like we're really wanting to make sure that we're meeting the moment with the urgency that it needs. And I'm just curious, Chief, you are overseeing a lot of this work. So even if you may not have any, I just like initial reactions in terms of kind of like, how do you see this particular effort that we're trying to push here on the council and supporting the work that you're trying to do in the administration?
Councilor Arroyo?
Yeah, I would love to answer that question, Councilor Arroyo, please.
You would like who to answer that question?
I would like the chief to answer the question.
Yeah, you can answer the question. I mean,
Thank you.
I'm going to leave this as the final question, and then we'll close.
Thank you.
Great. I think overall, the administration continues to stand on, we do not believe that it is the responsibility of a single person or two people to carry on the burdens of historic wrongs. And so why an advisory model for us works is that we have the tools, we have the people and the resources already in economic opportunity, in housing, in Boston Public Health Commission. Counselor, you said it yourself, it's not a lack of resources, it's a lack of coordination. And so for us, it's more around steering those resources to the hands and the spaces where people are. And so that I just want to give you sort of a theme of where the recommendations are going to be coming from.
I'll just say for the record that really, like that, again, just puts us in the lump sum of everyone else. And that doesn't really address the things that we've heard here in public testimony in terms of what people are asking for specifically. So I'm just going to encourage us to think about, if we were to have 5 cultural liaisons, right, that they also have a specific mandate for policy making, and they're going to say it's the cultural, and I don't think even liaison should be it should be a title that really reflects the moment, right? And it should be something that has a little bit more substance to it, right? So my thinking is that if it may not just be Latino and Caribbean, it could be Cape Verde, maybe we're looking at the top 11 languages that are spoken here in the city of Boston, and we look at it based on the need, right? And that there is some sort of mechanism in place that we're able to look at benchmarks, we're able to hold ourselves accountable to the deliverables, that there is a level of organizational structure that is put in place that I think right now, the way we're moving, I think that this is the reason why I'm pushing for something that is a little bit more formal, that has a little bit more of a mandate. And that's what I'm looking for, Chief, is for you to let us know so that we can shepherd this process in a way that is going to be a win for everybody. Because what I said to the administration is that the administration wins, the community wins, the council wins. It should not be one of these situations that just because the administration is not open to it, that we just say, okay, we're just gonna keep moving on. I have seen this happen in other spaces, and I'm really looking for real meaningful collaboration and partnership. So if it's not where it needs to be, I'm inviting you, that it is that you are looking.
I think you're having a poor connection there. Councilor Mejia, you're bouncing a little bit on your connection.
Yeah, I turned off my video camera. I'm not sure if anyone heard anything that I said.
We heard almost all of it. It was just a little bouncy at the end.
Yeah. So I just want to say thank you to the chief. I know that these are the sort of conversations, you're off camera, and at least you can walk by, that these are the sort of conversations that we really need to have publicly, and really help people understand that we're not in conflict with each other, that we are having the same conversation, that we want to go in the same direction. It's tweaking it in a way that sets you up for success, because what we don't want to do is to put forth something that is going to give you all more work. What we'd like to do is figure out what it is that is currently in place, what it is that we're trying to do, and figure out how we meet in the middle. And I think that that is what's going to really show that there is an effort and an appetite to really be collaborative. It can't just be, we're not doing this because the administration doesn't want it. It has to be, what does the administration need? What does the community need? And what does the council need to be able to work collectively? That's where my energy is, and that's what I want to invite.
Thank you, Councilor Mejia. And I just want to say we're at 1:05 p.m. I want to make sure we respect sort of the hard stops that central staff wants to have here. So I just want to thank everyone. I think there's obviously going to be an extended conversation between the administration and the original sponsors to get to a place where everybody wins and everybody is happy with what is coming out of that. This is not the only hearing we're going to have. There will likely be working sessions and meetings about this to make sure we get to a place where everybody is happy. And I just want to thank our panelists and Councilor Mejia for all of the work that you put in to make sure that the panelists were here and available and ready to go, and making sure it gets promoted to as many folks as possible for community comments. So thank you everybody who participated in this and got this done. And with that, I'm going to adjourn. So thank you everybody for your participation today.
Thank you.